This will still be just as useful, but moving forward, you can contact me about anything that I cover tonight, or alternatively Dawn, who's your lead link from Education Scotland as well. My network, so I'm going to put my cards on the table, my network's a little unstable today, so after I've done my reintroduction, I'm going to turn my camera off, but I'll turn it back on towards the end. As we're going through, if you have any questions, please do ask in the chat, use the reactions, or pop your hand up. I'm happy to stop as we're going. Okay, super. So, my name's Jenny Mackay. I'm one of the Digital Skills Development Officers at Education Scotland, and this afternoon, as Pam's outlined, we're going to cover some core tools that you may have been using aspects of or bits of, but we're just going to give that little bit of depth of knowledge and make sure that everyone feels comfortable, and highlight some ways you can use these in your classrooms and with your settings, and as well with your colleagues. So I'm going to give you a little overview of how they fit in with Glow and highlight just a couple of little things. Then we'll move straight on and look at OneDrive and the collaboration and built-in features that are there and how they could be used within your setting and your classroom. I'm then going to talk to you a little bit about Immersive Reader and some of the other tools that are available, which are accessibility tools, but are actually tools for everybody, and it's how we apply them and use them. So we'll look at, as I've said, Immersive Reader. We'll also cover Dictate and Transcribe. Then I'm going to have a little look at Whiteboard with you. So many of you may have interactive whiteboards in your setting or your classroom. However, there's a way to use them online for collaboration. So I'm going to cover that with you. And then I'm a big advocate of Calendar, and I thought it might be nice to look at how you could use Calendar collaboratively and build it into things like maths lessons. If there's time, I have a couple of other things up my sleeve, but failing that, we'll cover next steps, help, and where you can go for additional support nationally, and where there are additional resources that you may wish to tap into or highlight to your colleagues if you are one of the digital champions, etc. If there's anything that you were hoping to see covered that I haven't listed there, please do pop it in the chat. I can keep one wee eye on the chat as well. So I'm happy to make sure that I try and touch on anything that that you were hoping to see as well. Okay, so to contextualise why we're doing this as well, I just wanted to flag up Higgius covers, and most of this is going to be a demo, don't worry, it's not lots and lots of slides, but I wanted to flag up two documents. First of all, Higgius. So digital, pandemic aside, has literally never been more important. Higgius references digital or technologies or computing or computational 54 times. So the previous iteration of Higgius mentioned it twice, and that was just to say you could get it as a disc or a digital copy. So it's really been pushed to the forefront, and Higgius 3.3 about creativity, applying these digital literacy skills that we're going to look at tonight in a range of ways, is really a key statement. If you've not read those challenge questions and features of the highly effective practice, please do, but also 2.3 for the learning, teaching and assessment. However, tucked up in the corner of this slide up here, and I'll send a PDF of this presentation to Pam, and everything's hyperlinked up, but you may or may not have seen my team's document for what digital learning might look like. So this document highlights the digital literacy and computing science E's and O's and gives you some examples of exactly what it says on the tin, what digital learning might look like, things that you may not have thought of. So if you haven't seen that document, I would really suggest taking a little look. It breaks it down based on the E's and O's and the benchmarks, but as I say, it gives you some really useful ideas and ways that you may apply the curriculum within your setting, and it's there for early right through to second level. Okay, so just a quick thing I wanted to flag up. So I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, are aware, but for those who have maybe not used this or haven't seen it, Glow is made up of the Office 365 products as well as Google products, depending on your different tenancies. However, every learner and every member of staff is entitled to 5 free copies of the Office to download through Glow. So it doesn't matter if a family is made up of 5 kids or you and your entire family either work or go to school, everyone is entitled to each of those 5 copies. You can manage them through your Glow account, and as we're moving forward, you know, young people may have been given devices, some households change devices regularly, some households may have access to a device intermittently. This is a really useful resource for them to know about. As I say, they can manage it through their Launchpad. I'll show you where in a second, but this is such a useful tool. So please do highlight that everyone can access these 5 downloads. And if you didn't know that, hopefully that will help you moving forward as well. Okay. So why do we want to use Glow, Office 365 and OneNote? So essentially you can create and store your materials for learning and teaching, collaborate with others, and it's this evergreen environment, meaning that you're not needing to worry about, do you have the latest version? Is it going to be compatible? The other good thing about the evergreen environment means that if you have more senior pupils, and I think from the chat, lots of you are primary from the list that I've seen, but as our learners are going through, it's giving them the appropriate tools that would maybe most mimic their working environment if they were to go into an industry where they are using any sort of digital tool. So Glow and Office 365 is this constantly changing environment. It's done with consultation. However, it does mean that we have the most up-to-date and supportive tools available. And the tools are anywhere, anytime. Some of the stuff, and what I'm going to show you today, most of it will require a connectivity, so you will need broadband. However, not everything does. Over the course of the 4 sessions, we'll look at tools that do need online and can work offline too. However, this flexible approach allows you to have greater insight into what the maybe life of our young people may be, if they're working maybe for their health and well-being, if they're always approaching homework quite late on at night, you can have those health and well-being conversations. However, for us, it also means that we're not tied to one location. We can go out and do outdoor learning and take digital tools with us. It also means that we can work flexibly and maximise our work time too. As I've mentioned, anywhere, anytime also applies to devices. As most of you will know, if not all of you, all of these products are available on all sorts of devices, Apple, Android and Windows. And also it's a big plea for the OneDrive stuff specifically is to just start to remove, if you haven't already, the access to USBs. Hopefully nobody's using floppy disks. But if you are still using pen drives, this is maybe a good year to start as a school looking at what resources do you have, what do you need to keep, and some of the tips I'm going to show you how to pull whole files up into your OneDrive, so you're not reliant on doing it file by file. Also, it's a good time for a clear out maybe. Okay. So as I mentioned when I started, most of this is going to be live demonstrations. We're going to start with OneDrive, but again, as I said, if you do want to see anything particular, please pop it in the chat and we'll move on to our live demo. Okay. So could I maybe ask if you could pop in the chat if you've personalised your Launchpad just with a yes or a no or a Y or an N, if that would be possible, please. A little bit of interactivity. No, yes. No, yep, yep. Okay, so I'm seeing a mixture. I'm seeing a lot of yeses, but just for the people who are saying no, and to make sure that maybe I'm flagging up some things that you are aware of, I'm just going to very briefly show you this. So down the side, you have 4 Launchpads. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for responding. That's brilliant. So you have 4 Launchpads at the left-hand side of your screen. The first one is your own Launchpad, and your learners and you can personalise it. The one that's indicated by a house is your setting. So there'll be somebody within your school that manages that. The one that looks sort of almost like the Colosseum down here, that is your local authority. So for me, that is Education Scotland, and for you it will be East Renfrewshire. So in here you can see anything that Pam and her team have identified as key links and resources. And at the bottom is national ones, so that's the ones that Education Scotland push to all settings. There are different types, so you may see some tiles that your young people may not. So just they'll look the same as your colleagues, but they may not look the same as your learners. Within your own one, you have an add button, so you can make shortcuts here. And again, workload, this can reduce your workload lots because you may be going into the school one, the house button, and finding where people have put things for you. Select add, and you have two options. A personal tile is a link to anything on the internet. The app from library is a bit like on your phone. You've got an app store essentially. It's restricted to educational resources. And at the left side of your screen, you can see that they are free, paid. You can choose by curriculum area, level, and so on. So you can also search up here in the right-hand corner. Hopefully my screen is just going to catch up with me. There we go. So up in that top corner, if I search 365 for Microsoft resources, I can see any Microsoft resource that's there. A couple of things to know: you won't ever be automatically signed up for anything that you have a look at in here. So there's quite a strict moderation process for things going on in the App Store. So please do explore around and see what resources are there. Once you find the resource that you want, and that may be your mail or it may be your OneDrive, select the item and just click add to my Launchpad. I'm just going to check that you can see that. Okay. Click the small X in the top corner and you can repeat that process for anything you want. I'm just going to show you one that's in here because I think most of you are early. Okay, so if you are in primary or if you are secondary, there is a site called BBC Own It, which is a really useful CRIS resource for digital literacy. And there are also some internet safety resources in there as well. So it's definitely worth having a little look. Anytime you've added the tiles that you want, simply clicking them, adding to your Launchpad, select the little rocket at the top right of your screen, and that takes you back to your Launchpad. I've got quite a few on here, but at the very bottom, we can see the OneDrive app that I just added. Eventually, there we go. So if I want to move it around, I can edit my Launchpad up at the top. And I can drag and drop. So a quick thing and I will do this very quickly because I'll show you where to get guidance on this in the future. But if you have a topic, an IDL topic, any sort of resource work that you constantly refer to, you may want to use that add button and simply use the personal tile. This is a really useful way for you to be able to add links to research that you may be using, etc. So it's also, you can have a shortcut to Google, whatever you really want to be in there, you can have. So I'm just going to grab a quick link. Here's one I prepared earlier. Paste the link in, select, oops. I have a delay on my network, so Pam, if there's a big delay, can you just let me know, please? Hit generate thumbnail, and that gives you an image. So eventually, once that loads, we'll just type we're going to give it a title. Eventually, these pictures will stop wiggling. And we can click OK. There we go. So hopefully you should be seeing a little orange box next to that now. Okay, once you click OK, that tile is then located on your Launchpad. So this is really useful. We often give learners research projects to do, and we rely on them going back to the same pages to complete the activity, be it a presentation, etc. This is a really nice way for them to personalise the Launchpad, have that little bit of ownership. It's also a nice way to build on, or before you get to bookmarking. So you're within an environment, you may not want them to start saving to bookmarks, but they can have all of these visual tiles. It's also good for learners who require a bit more visualization than text-based resources. So that's a really easy way. If you do money, you can link to supermarket. There's lots of applications for using that. Okay, one of the tiles I would suggest you use is this 365 home. So what that looks like is the red icon, and hopefully in a second you'll just see my home page. So what happens in here is you can see all of the recent documents that you've used. So again, for your learners, anything within OneDrive automatically saves. So as soon as it's created, it's saving instantly and stroke by stroke. So the minute you even do a space, it's there. So what you can then do is use that home button to access everything that would normally be visible in your launcher up in the top left corner. That's a series of 3x3 dots and sometimes known as the waffle. You can also see any documents that you have created or that are shared with you. So here you can see a range of documents I've been working on. I mentioned that you can manage your Office installations. This is where you would do that from. It will allow you, once you've clicked that, even if you don't want to install it, it lets you manage where you've downloaded it to. And it lets you see recent documents that you've been working on. This is really useful as well because you can have favourites. So if you're coming in the morning, you're getting your class set up, you want them to open up the activity and you don't want them to be having to search through lots of different places, what you can ask them to do is favourite a document so that when they come in, it's constantly there for them. So again, if you've got learners where maybe accessibility, they may have some accessibility issues, that's a really handy top tip for them. They have one click to open the tile and one click to open their favourites, and their current documents are available to them. Again, in here, if you want to use any of the additional apps, you've got this little box of 3 at the bottom with one offset, and that allows you to see all of the apps that are available. So we're going to open up OneDrive. So the 365 home button is almost like shining a torch on your current stuff that you use within OneDrive. So here's my OneDrive, and there's a few things that I'm just going to go over. You can change the background, so I obviously have mine set for dark background because it's easier on my eyes. If you have younger learners, again, that whole visualization thing may be easier for them to use different layouts. You may want to use tiles rather than a long list. So you simply select tiles from the option and it will change everything to a much more visual basis. If they have documents that I have lower down in my page there, you can see that allows them to see a visual of what's inside the document. So for those early readers who are starting to decode work but maybe just need that little bit of support, that's a really useful tool. We'll go back to list view. You can also modify and you can see who's created a document, shared a document and edited it, and I'm going to show you that in a bit more. I do want to flag this up. So I know that lots of authorities and lots of staff created teams and were collaborating with learners through Teams over lockdown. I don't know though if you're aware that from your OneDrive at the left side of the screen there's this quick access panel, and that lets you see the file space of any team that you're a member of that you have access to the files. So if it's your class team, you obviously would have access to it and you can see what's going on in here. And it saves you having to, open up multiple things. That shortcut is a time-saving resource for you, but also for your learners. It's a good way for them to understand that they've got their homework in OneDrive and they've got work that is quick access from the quick access team, so they can access their Teams file, get a piece of homework from you, maybe work on it in their OneDrive, and I'll show you that in a second. And then you've got shortcuts up here. If you share work with people, and we're going to look at that in a minute, there's a shared link here, and that shows anything that is shared by you or with you. And that recent visual that we looked at is seen here as well. Okay, so up here, we can add a new document and create a document. So you may have a class team, but you also may want a small group of children or young people to work on a document or create a document and then share it with you. So it's not shared with the whole class, just shared with yourself or maybe a stage partner. So you can ask them to create a file directly in their OneDrive using this Add New button. You can create a folder or create a document. If I create a folder, I'm just going to call it one demo. So it appears up at the top. You can see it's instant. I can see that it's private, so it has nothing in it yet and when it was last made. I can then go in and I can create a document inside it. For example, a Word document. When I click Add New Word, you'll see that it's opened a new tab. So up here, I've got this new document and I can type on it. So hello. Oops. There we go. So my learners can create a document, set it up, and maybe give it the name of their group. So if we just call this the green group. You can see I use the drop-down menu. I can check where it's saved. I can see that it is saved. And for you, if you are creating the folders and maybe adding your class to it by adding a 365 group, and I'll show you that in a sec, you can see the version history. So you can see when they last went in there. So if I put in, I'll show you how curriculum, it's so useful, isn't it? I love that too. The version history is really good. So if I click version history, you can see who's been working on the document. It shows you that clear information. So learners are then able to have ownership of their work, and you can say, okay, so that's great. For example, learner 1, you've been doing lots, but learner 2, can you tell me what your role in this work has been? And you can sort of tease that out with them. So it lets you see who is contributing and have that discussion around who's doing what, and maybe making sure that one person's not doing all the work for the group. It also allows you to choose whether or not you're seeing the changes once you get to a certain point. So we have our document and we have some information, but in true Blue Peter style, here is one that I made earlier. Now I have a box over here, so I just need to get rid of that. There we go. We want to open this document. Okay. So I have my document and I could look inside it and I can add lots of information. So here's the one that I just made. I can see when it was last modified, but I may also want to share it. So I have lots of ways to do this. So I can share it with my learners by sharing the whole folder. And if I share a folder, everything inside it is automatically shared. But I can use a few different options. I can use the share button, which is identified by a right angle and a share arrow. I can use the same button up at the top of the screen, or in Glow or any Office 365 product, 3 dots are always the secret to an extra menu. I can hover over 3 dots and I can really quickly see the recent, who has used it, how many views it's had. So if I've said to a group, have you looked at that activity? I can maybe see there's 4 people in the group, but only 3 views or 3 viewers. I know that one person maybe hasn't viewed it yet, and I can have that conversation with them. I can also choose the 3 dots and I can choose share. So in here, I can then say what I want everybody to do. So the top advice we would always give is you use specific people. It's really important that we don't share documents that shouldn't be, and anything in your OneDrive should always be for learning and teaching. When you've selected any of the share buttons, choose specific people, and you have a range of options. You can choose to allow to share. So this would be maybe you've created an activity and you want the learners to see the resource, but you don't want them to edit it. This is also useful if you create learning and teaching material and you're happy to share it with a stage partner, but you don't want them messing with it. So you can deselect that or select it. You can have it in review mode, and there's a little bit of information in there where they can leave suggestions, but they aren't making big changes to the document, they're just suggesting them. And you can also block download. So you can say you can view this online only, but you can't take a copy. So just to flag up that. In some examples, you may have learners with accessibility issues. For example, in my old authority, before I moved to Education Scotland, we had some learners who used sign and were teaching their families sign language, so they would create videos, and you may want to share that. Again, please be cautious with any of the sharing links, but you can use a share with anyone link. And if you are using that, you can use a set expiration date, which I would always advise, and you can set a password that's specific. So at the expiration date, the link no longer works, and the password allows that you are doubly secure, you're sort of triple locking yourself. Once you're happy with it, so we'll just go for specific people, you click apply, and here you can put in a group name. So if it's your whole class's O365 group, or you can put in a user. So I'm going to put in, I have a different account, just going to put in me, and you can leave a short message. What that does is it demonstrates to the young person you're sending them an email. So again, it's a nice way to introduce the use of email. They're getting a really specific email. It's from you. It contains the link, and it allows you to share resources easily with them. You can also copy the link and paste it into a different email. Once you're happy, click send. So we have this document that we've shared. So sharing a document is really easy. You can also, however, share it. Oh, I'm just going to go up here from inside the document. Sorry, I have a window on top of this. I'm hoping that's going to click for you. There we go. Let me just minimize this a bit. This one. Okay, so in true Blue Peter style, here is a Word document that we have created earlier. We have a Word document, and I've popped in a few different pieces of information. So the first is I have some text on my document. I may want to share it, and again, that square button allows me to do all those features I just showed you. However, I can do a few other things with it. A young person might create a piece of work, and they might want some feedback on it. We want to give them feedback, but they can also use the built-in AI to create a piece of work, share it with a partner, get some feedback on it. I used to use the comments to ask my learners to give feedback. So they can share their document, and using the review button, they can ask their peers to give them feedback, like, I really like this work, I enjoyed your use of adjectives. It can be based on your success criteria. If you're doing show comments, you can pop in plus, and it shows them who has said what. So this is a nice way for you to also give feedback without sort of altering the text. It's a really nice way to be able to give feedback when, you know, in a jotter, we would mark on the jotter and say 2 stars and a wish and align it to the success criteria, but digitally that's harder. So using the comments on a document like this allows you to access it, and it doesn't matter if this is in your OneDrive or a Teams file space. So you can basically at the young person or just pop in your comment. So I like your use. And then you just save it. And that is identified there, so they'll see the little purple icon that will show them what bit of it is that I'm talking to. So if they had misspelled something, I could highlight that word, click and why was it me? So I might want them to provide more detail in their story, and I can add that in, and the young person can come along, click it and see what part of the story it is without it sort of being all covered in marks. So it's a really handy, useful tool. However, if you go into home and go right along to the edge, I'm just going to close comments. I have two different buttons, which if you've not used them, they're so good. So the first one is an editor button. So we can select this piece of text and we can choose the editor button. It gives them sort of like a professional editor score. They can choose what kind of writing it is that they've got, and they can choose, so if it's professional, maybe they're writing a letter. If it's formal story writing, if it's casual, it allows them to identify spelling that they may want to look at, and it allows them to look at a range of different categories, including vocabulary. It will also, depending on your network, mine is not playing up, it will search the internet for you in that similarity button. So if you're, I think we had a couple of secondary colleagues on, if you've got a piece of work coming in and you want to sort of check that it's not, that it's a young person's unique take on something, you can use that similarity feature. It's also quite a nice way to introduce copyright. So if we're thinking about the technologies, experiences and outcomes, copyright from first level is within the E's and O's. So we often start off with images, and I'm going to look at that in a second with you, but you can then look at it for text as well using that editor button. For learners who may be more reluctant to mark make on paper, or for learners with accessibility issues or English as a second language, also for feedback, Dictate is a super tool. So Dictate is identified by the little microphone. Select the microphone. I'm going to just pause that. Select the microphone and it will automatically start up. It pops up this little window. I'm just going to hide these. Delete the thread. So if I click the microphone, it will automatically turn on Dictate. Dictate is identified red when it's recording and blue when it's at standby. So selecting it, when I select the button, it will automatically record. I can then go back and check. Now you'll notice it didn't put a full stop on it. So I can go into the cog and I can have it auto punctuate. Also, it allows me to moderate the, it has a profanity filter. So if this is something, and obviously we wouldn't be encouraging this at home, but at school, but say a young person's working at home and maybe, you know, some of our young people have very varied home environments, that's quite a useful one just to make sure it's on automated by default, but it's quite good because it blocks out any sort of background noise that might be coming from a television, etc. So it allows them to capture their voice, but not sort of things that might be in the background. Also, I don't know if you spotted in that cog, somebody's popped in free story writing. Yeah, so it's so nice. I had a learner who was a reluctant writer in the past, and the Dictate feature really helped that young person. So using the cog, however, it will also allow me to input in different languages. So if we think about 1+2, when we want learners to capture their verbal understanding and write it down, check it. If you maybe have a learner who's come in with English as a second language and you don't currently have access to bilingual pupil support, maybe what you can do is select that young person's second language or use a 1+2 language, for example, French. Excuse me. I'm going to take a new line. So this is going to look out for French and type in this. Bonjour, ça va? So there you can see it's captured in French, hopefully. Yep, it's marked, it's added in accents, everything like that. My young people don't need to worry. I can also highlight it and right click. And in here I have a translate option. So I can translate my entire document, or I can just translate the section they wrote, and I have that in a different language. So it's changed from French to English, and I can switch it around as well. So again, really useful shortcuts for developing language, for learner being able to self-assess and self-regulate their understanding using some of these built-in tools, as well as for accessibility. This is also, sharing is also available, and dictate is also available in PowerPoint. So if you're familiar with PowerPoint, you may want to use that. One other feature from the microphone, if you're a class that does vlogging, so video vlogging, or does audio recording, you may want to select the little menu button and use transcribe. So what transcribe is, it basically takes recorded text that might be from phones, iPads, any sort of audio recorder that you have available, those little plug-in mic things that you get, or even the Bluetooth ones that are around, or even the yellow ones, going back some for them, but still. So I recorded the first line of Twinkle Twinkle. So all I did was I'm just going to get rid of that. So go to transcribe. We're going to do a new transcription. And I have two different options. I can start a recording directly into the built-in audio player that's there. Alternatively, I can upload, as I just mentioned, one from my file. So I'm going to upload. I've got Twinkle Twinkle, and we're going to open it. So what it'll do is it'll process it. And as it's processing, what it's doing is doing two things. Working out where different people are speaking. So if you're teaching literacy and you're looking at parts of speech or speech bubbles and speech marks, and you're starting to move from speech bubbles to speech marks, this is a nice way for the young people to verify who's saying what, maybe use some whiteboard activities, do some different consolidation work, and then they can also use this as a different tool. So they record their conversation and see if it's worked out the right person. They can then go back through and check who said what, add in the correct speech marks, etc. So there's only one of me, so speech marks are here. I can change the speaker name. So if there was two of me, you'd see speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 1, speaker 2. So I'm going to put my name, click tick. I can also, if I go into edit, I can check the transcription. So I can check, is that what it said? Did it pick up what I was saying? So that was right. And when you're happy, you've got a few options at the bottom. You can add just the text. You can add who said what. You can add a timestamp. So again, if you're thinking about, I don't want to jinx us all with saying Christmas is coming, but if you are rehearsing sort of school assemblies or shows or anything like that, you can add in the file link and then who said what, and all of this is then editable. You can change it. So it's very short, but you can add up to, on the online version, you can add up to 5 hours. So more than enough for most things. And then on the desktop one, it's unlimited. So you can add these huge audio files and it will transcribe it for you. So again, thinking about learners with maybe accessibility issues, this is a real bonus for them because it allows them to capture different voices in their school day, if that's something you want to do. But like I say, literacy, speech marks, brilliant. Okay, so here, if we just go back to the Hodgehog up here, I'm going to show you one other thing from here. So if I go to view, Immersive Reader is a text resource which allows you to look at text in a range of different ways. So it has 3 main features. It has text preferences, grammar options, and reading preferences. So this is a really nice way. If you have a Word document, so sometimes when we work with partner organisations, they give you a resource and it's maybe a Word document, for example. You may want to share the content of that, especially if you've got more senior pupils and you're doing, again, a project, IDL project. But it may be, this is a nice way to make it more accessible on a sort of interactive board. Rather than photocopying it, sharing it out, young people can look at it. So First of all, you saw there in my text preferences, I can change the size of the text so that it's more, it's easier to read for participants in my class. I can also increase or decrease the spacing, and I can change the font. There's a choice of 3. Comic Sans is available. It's been shown in testing to support learners who have dyslexia. So any user who may be dyslexic may find Comic Sans beneficial when they're reading. So that's why that one's there. And you can choose the colours. So again, learners who may be using overlay or tinted glasses may find this beneficial. If they've got lenses, it's also just a nice way to make it sort of slightly softer on the eyes, especially if you're looking at a document for a long time. When you're going through, a word can be read aloud and played aloud. However, you'll notice that some of my words are different colours. So again, if you're primary, you may have done the activity where you get different parts of speech highlighted in different colours. This is a really nice way to do that. You can also turn on or off syllables. So you can have it showing syllables, again, for that decoding process, or have it off. You can change the colour as well. So you may want to say, as your introductory lesson, okay, who can tell me what kind of word all of the sort of orange words are, and have that conversation. What could we replace that with, and so on. So we've looked at fonts and we've looked at the grammar option. You can also get them to check by adding on labels. And then the last one that I really love is you can choose to have the picture dictionary on or off. So if I click on pond, it gives me pond, and it'll say the word for my learners. But I can choose to translate it. So again, thinking back to English second language, 1+2, etc. If I choose French, and I can choose to translate my entire document into that, or just by word that I've selected. So I'm going to go for the whole document. Oops, scroll up. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. Make you all seasick. So we can flip between English and French just by doing that. And if I'm in French, it will allow me to click on the word and it will read it in that language. So a really nice, simple tool, supports all learners, allows them to access it, brilliant for grammar, so useful when teaching parts of speech, and it's just a nice way to make a lesson a little more interactive and give ownership of that over to you young people. It's also really useful if you have maybe families that are coming in, you want to communicate with them and you want to translate a document quickly and easily for them. You can use that. There's lots of other tools available, but this is just a nice one. It's built in and it's sharing what you're doing. For learners who maybe read ahead, you might want to highlight different lines of your text. So you can see here, I can focus on a line and we can do that with different line focuses. You don't have to have that on. Also, if you feel your learners may not respond or require a picture dictionary, that is also editable. So, a couple of things I should tell you about this. Immersive Reader is built in to different websites as well. So if you use Bing, it's built into many websites from Bing, so a lot of the BBC resources, for example. Not all websites have it, but it's a nice way to use sort of less visual clutter for learners who may be distracted. It's also good if you're using, you know, social stories. The news can be, I mean, it's quite challenging sometimes, the things that are on one page, so you may want to stream it to one particular article. Mrs. Anderson, to answer your question, so when I was in my old authority, I asked the bilingual support team to have a look at it, and they said that it wasn't bang on how they would translate it, if I'm honest, but they said that it was clear enough for them to say that they were happy for me to share it out with schools, and that anybody reading it would have understanding. So that was, they had looked at it, I think, in Polish. I think they looked at, maybe, I want to say Urdu, but I may be wrong. So we looked at it in a few different languages, and they were saying that it would give a learner clear understanding. In terms of the French stuff, it seems to translate over quite well. I checked it with our 1+2 team as well. I hope that helps answer it. Okay, so one very last thing, nipping back into copyright, just because we mentioned copyright and translation. You may want to share a document and give people different resources. So one person may add a verbal file through Dictate, one person may be doing text. I'm not going to demonstrate this fully, but I just want to flag up, you can insert an image live from the internet. So sometimes if we're asking our young people to upload resources, we want them to get one and start to introduce that it's copyright free. Using the built-in search through Bing that's in Word or is also in PowerPoint, it allows you to search for copyright-free resources and images. So anything that's found is Creative Commons. So that means young people could be assured. So if you're at that stage where you're having that conversation around the digital literacy E's and O's, this is a really useful way to highlight that. So for collaboration, there's lots of tools. We've got our document, it shares. Also, and hopefully this will work, if you're new to this and you haven't seen this being worked on, I'm just going to go up to the top of my page quickly. So if I type on my document here, and I have a colleague or a learner in my class, I am on my computer in a different device. So up here, oops, I'm gonna go. So my mouse is up here and I can see my other account is here. So if you're sharing a document and you want learners to collaborate on it and you want to have overview, you have this little icon that hovers over and shows you who is where. If it wasn't me with 2 accounts, there'd be little bubbles with their initials. Hovering over those bubbles looks a bit like that, but it will be next to the share button. Will let you see where that young person or colleague is in a document. So it's really handy if you're using it for professional resources and you want to make sure you're not writing on a bit somebody else is in. It lets you see where they are, if they're active. So again, if you're being given an activity for young people to do and it's maybe outdoors and they're not with you at the time, you can check where they are on the document and see what's going on and if any consolidation support work needs done, etc. So that's a really nice little top tip. Okay, if no one has any questions about OneDrive, sharing a document, I will just show you very quickly. If you see it says here, I shared that document, it says shared at the end. I can click it and I can see who has access, if there's a link, etc. and I can stop sharing it instantly. So if I've given young people activities to do and I want them to finish it by a certain point, I can stop sharing it so I can mark it. I can reshare it at any time. And as I mentioned, the 3 dots will allow you to see that version history down the side, and it lets you see who edited it, and you can go back and save them. So again, at the end of the year, you can take the original copy and reuse it for a different activity. So I hope that is useful. So a couple of other things. I thought if no one has any other questions on that, I thought I would cover Whiteboard, if that's okay with everyone. So Whiteboard, in here, if I just go to Whiteboard, has anyone used Whiteboard? Oh, so a couple of questions. Miss Brady, can you upload? Yes, you can. So Mrs. Brady, to upload from your phone or as a school device, an iPad, for example, it's the same principle. Have the app on your device and you can do it in 2 ways. One, say it's a photograph or a video like you've just mentioned. Tap that. Mrs. Yoon, I'll come to your point in just a second. So, so tap the resource and then share it. So that's a square with an up arrow if it's a Windows device. I'm not sure on an Android, if I'm honest, but you can share it with OneDrive. So you can share it and select OneDrive, from your list of share options, you'll see a sort of scroll of different places you can share an image to. Alternatively, and perhaps for school resources slightly more secure, I would say, is have the app on your phone, open the app, and when you're looking at My File Space, if I really quickly go in here, select this, it looks just like this, but the icons are along the bottom. Sometimes if it's especially if it's your phone, select Upload and select File, and it'll show you camera roll options, etc. Or you can select the file you want, so upload and just open. And then what you'll see is up at the top, so I'm just going to let that catch up with me. Up at the top corner, it will give you where there's a tick. That will turn to a little circle that spins, and it lets you see what's recently been done, and it shows you there. Anything that's newly added to a OneDrive has these little eyelashes, 3 little lines. So again, your learners can easily identify recent work that's gone on in their OneDrive, anything they've just made or anything that's just been shared with them. It's visible there. I should have probably shown you this as well. The eye in the corner will let your young people, this is really, really useful. If you've got learners who've maybe saved something and are saying, oh, I don't know where it went, I knew I did it, I created it, but I don't know where it's gone. And we've all been there and done that. You've saved it in the wrong place or you don't know where it is. The little eye up in the top corner lets you see the recent things that you've been working on, and it goes back like ages. So you can go through, it tells you what it was, where it is, and you can click it to open that document. Once that document is opened, so if we open this one, you can then see, hopefully, the document, that was the one we were looking for, the title of the document, and I'm hoping that you've got less of a lag than me, there we go, and it'll let you see it's in my OneDrive and the name of the folder that it's in. And you can change that at any time using the arrow at the side, and that lets you change where it's sitting, etc. So you can move it around. You can also add a new folder. So that I button is really handy for finding maybe learners that have shut their device really quickly and not thought, where has it gone? That's quite handy. Mrs. Ewan, I can't find the Whiteboard app. So there's 2 versions, and I can cover that with you just now. So for Whiteboard, in Glow or in an Office 365 tenancy, the 3 sets of 3 dots, select Whiteboard, and it's there. There is also, if you see at the bottom of my screen, a desktop app. If you're not sure if it's available, select the search bar and just select Whiteboard up. It's a free app. If you have a Windows 10 device, chances are it's there. It may not be, so this is obviously not the region that I normally work with, so I'm not entirely sure. Pam could probably give you better advice than me. But if you can't find it there, then it is available within Glow if you do want to explore it. But Pam says it's not there just now, but she's working on it. But you will see it in Glow, I think. So hopefully this will give you a wee kind of starter into it. Perfect, that's great. Thanks, Pam. Don't want to show stuff that isn't there. Okay. So when you click Whiteboard, you start with this blue button, and that creates a new whiteboard. So here we have a whiteboard. Really familiar with any of the sort of draw tools that might be on your Promethean board or ProWise panels, whatever board, Smart Touch boards you've got, whatever ones you're using, it's very similar. You can basically, selecting the hand allows you to move, it's blank so you can't really see, if we make a little mark. Selecting the hand allows you to move things around, so you have an infinite bit of paper essentially. So why is this beneficial? Well, all of your learners can be added by simply selecting share, which is that little person icon, and getting a link. So you can paste this into a team. You can make it a tab. There's a way to put it directly in your team that I'm sure Dawn's going to cover when she's looking at Teams with you all, but you can put it into an email to your class. You can make it a tile for your school, and everyone can collaborate on this with you. So it's really easy to share. It's also incredibly easy to stop sharing. So you just are simply selecting the toggle button on and off. On, copy link, off, turns off. That means that you still have the copy of it, but no one else does. You can add text, and if you have a stylus, you're able to mark make on the online version. You can change the color, and you can get rid of anything using the bin. You can insert images directly. So if we go to pictures, open. So you can ask questions, draw the direction. So it might be that you want young people to put a tick at the side where they think the Bebop will go forward, which way should they click it, and they can move that around to demonstrate understanding. You can pop in shapes again, so if you're doing mind mapping and you want an activity, and again, what I would suggest starting with is creating one with small groups and asking 4 people to complete an activity on it. And you can pop in a post-it, and I love the post-it note, so I'm going to show you that in a second. Whenever you're finished, it will automatically save. You can click home and it automatically saves. You can also rename it or delete it. If you have access to a Windows 10 device that does have it, Pam, are you okay if I show the desktop version just for some additional features? Or would you rather just stuck to Glow? Just let me know. Perfect, okay. If you have the desktop version and you sign in with your Glow account, which I've done here, you'll see anything that's in your Glow account. So that's the one I just made there, but I have some additional features. So again, Blue Peter Styly. So I might make this and I might say to the group of young people, I've basically added some stickers onto here. So there's a plus button at the bottom of the screen, which hopefully you can see. And there is a range of options. So I've just used stickers and I've put up here. And what I might want them to do is come along and use the ruler, and I want them to identify where the lines of symmetry are and mark it. Each learner can have a different color pen. Right click allows me to change the pen type. There's some funky colors for fun, but you can turn them off. So you may not want the sort of more sort of vibrant colors. You may want more traditional ones, and you can also change the pen nib. So if I choose that, I can line it up and I could draw the line of symmetry along it. Also along here, I have angles which I've just drawn on. So again, I might want to give my learners some shapes, and I want them to identify the angles and then use the pen. Use the pen to mark make. So this is not happy at all. So all I would then do is draw on here. Let's see. Just going to grab a stylus and see if that will help. There we go. So I can then write on this. I could draw down here and so on. So again, using that gives me a really nice way to discuss angles, have my learners go off, work together, identify the angles, then find objects in my classroom. And using that plus button, if the devices that you have are available, you can then insert an image. They could take photographs and insert it as a photograph, paste that photograph into the sheet. They can also create lists, and you can have a note grid. So I'm going to come out of this. Here's one I made earlier. So the note grids are really nice. I really like a rag system for stuff. So red, amber, green it. So here's an example of a sheet from that, what digital learning looks like I mentioned earlier. It's got the E and O, the concept, and some example learning activities. So all I would want for maybe my colleagues, if we thought of this in the class in professional learning, is identify 2 things that they are comfortable with, identify 2 things they would like to know more about, and identify 2 things they wouldn't feel comfortable doing yet and they maybe want some support with. So to add a grid like that, you're simply adding note grid. If you create a note grid and you have maybe 9 members of staff, or you want maybe during that, this is really nice for Diamond 9 activities where you set your learners a problem, tap a box, add a grid, and then just make sure you've got them all where you want them to be. Anytime you tap it, I also really like this. So if I just change this to yellow, so I've now got all my boxes. So I could also say, okay, I want you to look at the suggestions that we've come up with, and I want you to vote for one that you really like that isn't your own. Tapping the box allows learners to come along and collaborate using this. It's such a useful tool. If this is an image, you can also import a PDF and you can annotate on top of the PDF. It allows you to rub out without affecting what's underneath. And at the side, you have ability to format the background, different colours, again, that lenses, different types of paper. My background is primary and early years. So in here, it's often quite hard to get good wide lined paper for interactive board. I can use wide lines and stretch them as my learners in primary 1 or 2 might have needed. So again, I've got simple text buttons, but this is one of my other things that I like. And near the bottom, I have underneath the format background button, I have the option to change the location of my toolbar. So you may have, depending on the needs of your learners, you may want to have the toolbar at the bottom, but you may have little hands that like to sort of tap, as can be the case. So you might want to adjust it so that actually the pens sit up at the top, and there's less likelihood you could just have it sat so that it just adds post-its, or it just does undo or redo. So you can move that band around. And also, if you have a stylus, you'll see here I can choose the dictate button by tapping text, and I can choose to have a pop-up. So all I did was tap the text option, double tap the text button, and because I've got a stylus near my device, it's allowing me to have the option to dictate or to use an online keyboard. I can also just write, and it's pretty accurate. So again, learners with fine motor skill development needs, or learners who are maybe mark making, using something like Whiteboard, and if we just stick to the online version, using something like Whiteboard reduces the fear of young people who maybe don't want to write in front of their peers yet, if they're maybe a little bit less confident. So again, just to identify where I got it, the waffle top left hand corner, select any of their, if you don't see it in the apps that you're seeing on the screen, the way this selection of apps is, it shows you the ones that you use the most at the top. So if you're not seeing it, select that all apps option that's down at the bottom, and it'll give you a much longer list. So really, really handy. Okay. So that is some useful tips for Whiteboard. I'm going to, I won't cover calendar, but I am going to show you just something that might make lessons. This is a basic thing for adding into PowerPoint just before we wrap up. I'm conscious of the time. For creating lessons with your learners, you may want to introduce 3D models to your PowerPoints and to your resources. So again, you might want them to go on a shape hunt, add in images, record their shape hunt as well. So a few features that you may not know about in PowerPoint, you can obviously share, so open it, your OneDrive, create your new PowerPoint, and you can share it, and you can ask them to do a couple of things. Selecting insert allows you to use that media option that we just looked at, so they can record Instructions, this is useful for computing science, for example. Record step by step the path they took, a bit like a human bee-bot, for those of you who are familiar with those. So you can record your path and then they can video it and insert the video to show was the algorithm correct. But lots of people don't know that this also has a built-in feature to allow screen recording. So you might want your young people to demonstrate that they can complete a process or to record their understanding of something. So they can insert a screen record. This is also useful if you ever want to record how to do something, videos, and you can share it in a PowerPoint if you don't have access to different software. So insert, media, and screen record. So I just wanted to flag it up. All that happens is you can record anything on your screen. So if I wanted to use my whole screen, draw the box over the area that you want, or your young people to demonstrate to you, open up whatever they want to have recording, and then hit record. You can choose to have audio on or off, and you can choose to have it record the pointer. So again, it's a really nice way for learners to demonstrate understanding and share it with you through OneDrive. It's a really nice way for you to capture a process and share it with your learners remotely, or just have a bank of sort of how-to videos. Really lastly, and I promise I'll be really quick, for maths, we often get bags of shape out. If you want tactile resources, learners learn by tactile activities. I get that completely, but you may want them to sort of reinforce their understanding by using digital shapes that are built in. There's also ways to have models that actively work and move around and can be used to promote discussion. So again, rather than always searching online, it's about learners demonstrating that they're able to access resources. This is done by insert 3D models. So again, for conversation points, I might be saying, what is the bee doing? So rather than the still image, we may be going out to the garden. We might be looking at it. What do we do? Really simple way. You do need the desktop version for this. That's the only thing. So all you're doing is insert 3D model, and these are all stock models. There's a website, there's a webinar recorded that I can share with Pam if it's of interest, but I've popped some step-by-steps up there just to highlight them. Okay, so just before I wrap up, you can get additional support from our team, as well as all the amazing stuff that is going on in your authority. And I love the sway, by the way. I should have started with that. The sway, I had a look through, it's really good. So there's DigiLearn. Scott has lots of resources. I'm in the process of recording a ton of new content for these bite-sized guides, but this will take you there. The bite-sized guides are broken down into these tiny bite-sized videos that take you through step-by-step how to use the different platforms, and we update them as much as we can to make sure they're current. You can also access one on Immersive Reader that I showed you, and this might be useful if you do have any learners with accessibility needs, or you want to know about these features that benefit everyone. It shows you what bits of all, like these are all the things I showed you apart from maths today, and it shows you what platform and app they're all available in. So that's a handy little grid to have alone. Microsoft has free training you may be interested in. You can use your Glow account. Doesn't cost anything. It's really important. Glow Connect is a really useful site. It has guidance for teachers, parents, learners. There's also a bit in Help with Glow of practical activity resources, so more technical support, but they have really good guides. It's asking for a passcode when you use, I will check that before I send Pam that. I checked them before, so I'm not sure if something's happened. I will double check it though, and let you know about the passcode. And I will hand over to Pam, if that's okay. I have a QR code. Is it okay if I share that, Pam? Is that okay? So just before I finish, we have a quick evaluation. The results will be shared with Pam.